A tēnā rawara e tātaima e koutou tokotoru teu whakeia e pā i e hōiwia whakawhētairawa kua mai anō tātou ki roto tonu anō ki ngā kōrero a Tahumakakanuimatua i ngā Taunaha tūpuna, Taunaha whenua putātua anō ki roto ki ngā whakataunga kreme o mātau i o tēnira no reirana. Ai roto tonu anō hoki i te kaha o tōu, te whai pākahatanga mai, o tōu whakatūrukiruki i tōu anō kaha whakarahirahi kaha tohu anō i a tātou mātau. Kia whakamoe mititi a koe ka tika epa, i e hoi ana epa, kia whakanuia kokoe i tā i e hiuhi. Āmene ai. Ai rā e tātou mā. Me te mihi tonu i a rātau mā. Me te mihi tonu i a rātau mā. Nā rātau hoki ko tō tātou e te kānu hiora. Tai tonu i e nei taonga tiku iho ngā kōrero katoa no nei ai. Kia tino matatau anō hoki tātou matau ki e rātu huatanga ne. I a rātau, tēnei katoa tai ai. Nō rātau, nō te atuatanga, nō i e hōwia, tō tātou taiho i e nei huatanga, me te kaha kairoto. Me te kaha kairoto, me te pū manawa. Mai te pai? Mai te pai? Me te tau tōhito, kairoto. E nei huatanga katoa, kai a rātau. Pitātua no, tō tātou atua matua nui te rangi. E no reira, hoki tonu mai, hoki haere mai, kai te mihi atu tēnā rā tātou. Yeah. I wouldn't have a clue of exactly what happened there, but all of a sudden, and it's doing this from time to time. I'm going to get things checked because I don't know whether it's the way we've got it set up or whether our cyber criminals are getting in and still playing around with the system. I think it's partly that. And because I'm not silly, because I know a wee bit now about how we're set up, and you can't tell me that our system is doing that. That was probably the cyber criminals got in and decided, let's have another play around with them. Now that we've heard, because we know that they're gang, we know that it's mob, and we know that it's Hutt Valley. See, Hutt Valley mob are playing around with our system. See, and they're silly doing that. Christchurch mob have been doing the same thing. See, so we're not silly. We're not silly. And the cyber criminals, and this is some of the silly stuff that they get up to. But let's continue onward. To where we were focused on the actual simple fact that last time we got to talk a wee bit about te reo kai roto i tēnei pukapuka nei te pokau he whakaputanga 1835, the Declaration of Independence. Of course, a result of events that happened from around about 1831-32, where our tūpuna mātua, yet again, funny thing, every time you read Crown documentation or you read Crown fostered or funded research, they always refer to the North as a group of ngāpuhi having been part of this and that. Well, of course, most of the people in TeTaiRawhitiAukatiTai in 1840 and even prior to 1840, we're talking 1835, were not ngāpuhi. So let's put it that way. When you read a lot of their research, you get the picture that, you get the feeling that, these people were way out of touch, and they were. And even a lot of the modern research, when you look through it, a lot of it is way out of touch. Okay, they're not even onto it. They're not even onto our people. They're not even onto our tūturutanga. They're not even onto And this needs to stop. Okay? What we are sick of in this space is Pākehā, oh sorry, not Pākehā, actually, this is not a Pākehā fault, this is a Crown fault. Let's get that right. And let's put that right, a Crown fault is making us all go in different directions. Crown goes this way, we all go that way. And it's continuous, and we are sick of it. We're sick of reading the Crown, the government, the research that comes out of the claims processes, everything. All the systemial stuff that comes out of politics and out of Parliament, all of that sort of thing. Crown's going that way, and we're all going this way. We're yet to start working together at Taunaha, where the Crown actually starts to see us for who we actually are, and deal with us for who we actually are, and so that they know exactly what they're dealing with and how they should be dealing with that. Okay, far too often do we pick up a lot of that stuff. Why was I starting to get into kōrero, a little bit of kōrero on that just previously in video 1? Because e Taunaha, and I'm glad we quickly got back on air, on the live e Taunaha, and that is because we've only got about 45 minutes left, and so I wanted us to get into the times, the events leading up to the declaration. So it was all a part of events that started to happen. Some of the concerns, I mentioned that last week, of our tūpuna mātua, along with the lawlessness, all of that is ongoing. Why? Because the Crown's so apathetic. See? It's a funny thing. You know, a lot of the interpretation today of our law system goes to show how out of touch our law system is. We're talking about the actual court systems that would deal, I mean, we're talking about Supreme Court, High Court. That's a serious matter. Very, very serious when they are going in the other direction as well. And we're going in this direction. I mean, do we have to accept the way that they treat our people when things are forever going like this? When they have forever trespassed over our people, maltreated our people, and been part of an entire system that was geared up to destroy our people. Okay, and why are we so concerned about that, going in different directions? Because the first step that needs to be taken is for both parties to actually come together and be on the same level and be in the same area and actually get into the same room at the same table and talking around what needs to be talked around. Justly, politely, distinctly. Okay, until that can happen, we're not going to get anywhere in this country. I mean, that's why those of us within Kohuiarau, which is us included, part of the most senior within Kohuiarau, who will be taking over that system in good time. Part of us within He Whakaputanga 1835, part of the most senior within there also. And I think Moai Hapu Iwi will keep control of that. Okay, we are also a part of that still. We're just not a part of some of the Moai Hapu Iwi projects at the moment within there. Okay, that's why we've gone the way that we've gone, because of this dire situation that we have. And as far as we're concerned, the Crown's going to keep going that way, and we're going to keep going this way. Okay, what I want to say to that is that the Crown needs to make the move, because they've made all the mistakes here. They need to make the move to actually get us all around the same table and talking justly, honestly. You know, look at the All Blacks. Look what they did. I mean, yeah, look at all the last Olympiad. You know, when you put your mind to it, when you all get around the same table, when you all have a part to play in the way you want to approach your goals, you can be a success. And ultimately, you know, to figure on the world stage in either areas of sport and recreation and just representing our country on that level is just absolutely amazing. I mean, you look at the big turnaround of the All Blacks in the past weekend, absolutely amazing. You know, some of us would have thought, well, you know, some guys said, wow, is it possible for the All Blacks to win a second time? I said, yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, we're at a rebuilding phase. The team's only rebuilding. That's why we lost the other week. Yeah. And we lost against a formidable side. Argentina's always been formidable. And not only that, but they've become stronger over the years. So, yeah, okay, it was always possible for the All Blacks to beat Argentina, but these days, pretty tough to say over the last 10 years, probably. But in the past, we only beat them because we worked hard and we played as tough, or even tougher than they did to actually win. Yeah, that was why. They always were one of the toughest battles, that's what I'm saying. See? So we might have beaten them. If you look at our record, we tend to, against Argentina, have a huge record on paper. And of wins and stuff like that. But they've been wins that have come at a huge cost. Yeah. Don't take Argentina for granted. They're a tough team. And we thought, well, yeah, it could be close, And some thought, well, yeah, if the boys have really had a good look in the mirror. And that's what can happen if you do that. I mean, the Olympiad, you know, our Olympians didn't need to look into the mirror or anything like that, obviously. They just needed to prepare and prepare well for what was ahead for them. And they did massively. Didn't they do us proud? Yeah, so amazingly proud have we all been, and some of us full of tears, and even, you know, amazing stuff. And then for the All Blacks to bounce back that well, wow, none of us would have expected something like that, and I certainly didn't, especially when the team is rebuilding. I've watched that phase pretty closely. And hopefully the Crown gets some guts. This is what I don't like about the Crown. They seem to be so gutless. They're so very gutless. And they're so quick to call things under their process and call things for an LNG. To me, that's gutless. And it's one of the most gutless moves that they've ever made. You know why? Because all that is a cover-up for their process, and it's a cover-up for the simple fact that they don't really know what they're doing. They don't really understand what they're dealing with, and they don't really know how to deal with it, so they pass it on to the LNG. They pass the buck, in other words. And what does the LNG? The LNG do? This is like kahungunu. They run riot. They do whatever they want. See, this is how the process operates. It's disgusting. Utterly disgusting. And then people like us, the honest ones, they come into the space with all guns blazing. You know, we've got all the evidence to back us. Kahungunu rangitane got nothing. And they try and, claim the world just because they've got all this power under the Crown, who knows nothing. But the Crown does not fool us. They're hopeless. bliss. And hopefully very, very soon they'll be out of here. Okay? But again, yeah, we still would like to see that decision made by their own people. That's how our tūpuna mātua would have handled that. So that's how we see it best to handle that. Okay? And I don't think that'd be wrong. I don't think that'd be wrong. Because e tātou mā, no, yeah, there's never been anything better to our tūpuna than our own, taking care of our own. Even when they've done wrong, like I mentioned last week, when they've done wrong, yeah, make sure they get their just desserts, they take their punishment, but then you bring them back home. Bring them back to, yeah, there are some cases that are just too far gone, so we have to let them go. Okay? And though they're very, very rare, there are cases. We have to let them go, but this is not one of them. See? And the problem with this whole space is the Crown. They are the problem. And this is why we've kept targeting them, because we want them to know that they are the problem. And yes, though they admit to that, they don't wholly take full responsibility and hold to their obligations to that. Not totally. I mean, just passing the buck to the LNG all the time, every time it comes to us. Oh, taihua, taihua, you know, e mea nei I te mea, I te tūāhua, I've got to deal with the tūturu lot. Can you take care of it, please, Mr. LNG? Oh, yeah, we'll deal with that, they go. Yeah, we still want control anyway, and we want to, yeah, okay, because you're the LNG, you can do that under the process. See, this is how it goes. And our lawyers are having a field day, and have had a field day, having a good look at this process. Some of them in the early stages of our claims, which is, yeah, not making sense, some of our lawyers. So the later ones have had a bit more sense of the urgency and the space needed in dealing with a lot of the problems that are there, and they're all Crown manifested and infested. Let's get that right. Don't try to dispel the fact that the Crown was always going to rip us off and pull this heist. Let's just say that the tūā kanakana, the senior ships of the Motu, knew that. They knew that that's what was coming. Okay? But just in case they could have been wrong, or just in case things might have gone a little bit differently, they said to the juniors, yeah, all those of you who wish to sign up. And so they did. Even across the Motu, everyone listened. And even last week I can remember saying, you know, that the Crown was probably very, very worried, very, very frightened about the simple fact that the rest of the Motu would hear that the senior ships refused them. They would not have known at that time, probably, but they knew that immediately. As soon as the senior ships, they were laughing right across the Motu. But they still remained supportive and determined and focused on the simple fact that what they were part of here is the building of a nation together. And they were all for that. They liked the goodwill. And like I said last week, technology and, you know, industry, that was huge to our tūpuna. That was the biggest thing that could ever happen to them, you know. And though they argued and bitched and carried on, and you know, they yeah, so much debate and so much difference happened, and this is how conflict started, and the musket wars began. that actual feudal culture got a bit too in there, under their skin, and started to destroy a lot of the aims of a lot of our tūpuna of that time. And it was actually juniors, by the way, juniors that started those wars. So it were the juniors that actually caused those wars. But in a lot of cases, seniors actually had the last say in those wars. Tahumakakanuimatua o Tutura Hapu iwi being the main one of them, that had the majority of the say in the end over the musket wars. Okay, tataima, good for us to understand that. Do not dispel the fact, the simple fact that they were out to heist this country. The simple fact that that's exactly what happened up to 1947. 1840 to 1940, 47, 57, 60s, all of a sudden. The Hun report, what did that say? 60, 61? We were extinct. Yeah. I can hear some of you out there saying, yeah, our super tribal, spiritual, cultural way had become extinct by and large. And that wasn't such a bad judgment if some people think that that was incorrect. That was correct. But then the possibilities of a lot of that, spiritually, culturally, sub-tribally, coming back to life, yeah, it's questionable, okay? But in some cases, yeah, the possibility has been there of some of that coming back to life. Okay, why? Because our tūpuna Moteo would have set a lot of that up in that way, especially among the seniorships. And this is why the seniorships have come back today so strongly, because seniorships took good care to make sure that if at any time in the future we needed our tūturutanga to rebuild, that it was possible to rebuild. Okay, that's where we've been ever since the seniorships came back in. Okay, e tatama. But just take note, e tatau, of the simple fact that e tatama, within a lot of the crown-orientated research, you get the different terminologies. See, with us it's about super tribal, it's about spiritual, it's about cultural. Okay, that's what matters the most. It's about Hapu iwi, it's about Uretārewa, Hapu whānauri, all those particular terms. This is some Crown research on the area that fleshed out, gives us a bit more detail, and that will lead us into the actual document as well, and give us a bit of focus from the English version, Busby's version of He Whakaputanga. Okay, so I'm going to just work through here with you some of that research. Page 1, the introduction. He whakaputanga o te rangatiratanga o New Tirene, semicolon, the Declaration of Independence of the United Tribes of New Zealand. In 1831, 13 Ngāpuhi, you notice that Ngāpuhi, let's say it's Ngāpuhi, okay, because they weren't all Ngāpuhi, and we've already checked that out. In 1831, 13 Ngāpuhi chiefs wrote to King William IV of the United Kingdom to seek an alliance and protection from other powers. On 28 October 1835, James Busby took this a step further at a hui meeting he had called at Waitangi. Notice that they said protection from other powers. That's not entirely true. That's not entirely true. That's not what went down there. That's not what they were concerned about. They were concerned more so about the lawlessness And the other part of things there was some of the issues that came up, that built up around and towards the actual simple fact that what our chiefs and tribes were mostly concerned about was the simple fact that the Crown was not acting within the goodwill that they should be acting within, and that the lawlessness continued, and that they were doing nothing about it. They were the main concerns. Okay, when they talked to the Crown about alliances around keeping poachers out of our country, who were stealing our resources in the country by night and taking off and taking a whole lot of our resources, that was something that we thought about with the Crown of Westminster, because we were already allied with them. So we thought we'd bring that into them. Now, how we know that is because we know that those Ngāpuhi were not fully Ngāpuhi, and that was not the actual reason that they went over to the Westminster people. They were not looking for a protective as such. Okay? And we know that because we know that within the Reo Hapu iwi, that these sorts of areas of where they actually say that here in this particular bit of research that I do not count as major research. To us, this is the typical Crown infested, manifested type stuff that you get. They will call it how they call it, but they will focus on what they think is important for them. They fail, as they always do, to look at exactly what's going on precisely for us. See? And that's why they make some of the judgments that they do. Oh, they went to Westminster to get a protective. That's not true. We've never gone to Westminster to get a protective. That's never happened. Okay? Letters, other documentation. If we were to bring all that in, we could prove this wrong right in front of you. And I could have gone all out to do that today. Okay? That's not the case. We were not afraid of the French. We were not afraid of the US. We were not afraid of anybody. Okay? It's just the way that some of the Crown operating, and even those of today operating under the Crown, they tend to use the same terminology, the same sort of narrative. Okay? We were subservient, we were needing protection, which is not true. That's not true. Not once did our seniorships ask for protection. Okay? And in fact, most of the people that went over were actually juniorships. So even if they did ask for that, it wouldn't have been particularly supported by the seniorships. So if they did ask for that, which I doubt that they did, if they did ask for that, they would have sucked Westminster in saying that, because that protection would have only been officially over the juniorships, not the seniorships, who would never ask for that. What they looked to build was an interrelationship within an alliance that would keep poachers out from all across the world, because we were already allied with Great Britain. Okay? On 28 October 1835, James Busby took this a step further at a hui he had called at Waitangi. By the end of the day, 34 rangatira had signed He Whakaputanga o te rangatira Tanga o Nutireni, known in English as the Declaration of Independence of the United Tribes of New Zealand, in brackets, full stop. Busby had acted partly in response to Frenchman Charles Philippe de Terry, EasternDivide, who had announced plans to proclaim an independent state in Hokianga. The self-declared nobleman's claims were in the end easily dismissed. But the fact remained that if Britain did not intervene in New Zealand, another country might do so. That's not true. Not entirely true. Okay? What our tūpuna were waiting for, the senior ships were waiting for, was for the French to hit us. That's what they were waiting for. They were waiting for all-out war with the French. See? And we know that. We know that. We're not silly, because we know the law amongst our tūpuna Moteo, and we know how they operated in that time. And they were not afraid and did not need protection from Great Britain. Though they were quite open to that. They possibly, within the alliances, able to be, aided. There wouldn't have been protection, there would have been definitely aid and assistance and alliance. Just like Israel today is not being protected, they're being allied with. They're being aided in the war against Iran and the Islamic terrorist proxies and the Islamic State terrorist state of Iran. Okay? Same thing, yeah. To actually put it like that, I wouldn't mind talking to the people that wrote a lot of this stuff up. See, and this is what I mean. The Crown's always going in one direction, we're always going in the other. Isn't that hugely different? We're worlds apart, in other words, and we've got to stop that. We've got to stop that. It's got to start with the Crown. They're the ones who are stuffed up over the years. The more they keep going that way, is the more stuff up we're going to have. Okay? As far as I'm concerned, we've always been ready, and we've looked over our heritage, mate, and we've always been ready to come to the table. It's the Crown that's always dodged that opportunity. Okay? And, yeah. No points for guessing as to the reasons why that is. It's quite clear. I think the Crown has always suspected there was a rip-off gone down here. But because they couldn't prove it, they thought they had to go the other way. Well, now they can just come back this way and start the talks around the table, have some guts, and actually come to the table once and for all. Because we're sick and tired of these window dressings where they say, oh, they're here to tend to the grievances of our Hapu. You know what? All we've had is grievance. We're one of the most senior in the land, and that's all we get is grievance. They haven't tended to anything yet. And we've been in the process 16 years. Come on, get it right. The Crown needs to get it right. Okay, and that's the sort of research we're dealing with here. Research that's in around the narrative of the Crown. It's out of here, but I wanted to get some in-depth. Yeah, and I knew I was going to talk around some details because it was important for you to know that a lot of the details differ. But it'll give us a deeper look into and insight into the actual events of the time. Okay, I just went quickly across them and quickly through the first article. We can get some in-depth stuff out of this particular research so long as I talk around it with you and actually support the information and the details that you acquire. Because I'm right. Believe you me, we've already proven all the stuff that we're going on about now. All we need is for these people to come on board and for the Crown to get it right and come to the table and make sure that there's an opportunity for us to come together and start talking around these things rather than the Crown actually dodging, avoiding their obligations to us. Okay? Now, Charles Philippe de Thierry had nothing to do with anything as far as our tūpuna mātua were concerned. They took them out in the north, the French, and they were waiting for a backlash, and that didn't come. That didn't come. You know why? I think part of the reason was because they knew we were already allied with the British, and they weren't planning at all to attack us. They just took it that they broke the law and they paid. Look at that. That's how harsh our law system can be. They paid with their lives. I can't remember how many of their people there were that got killed over their trampling of our law system here. But yeah, the French were killed here. There was no fear of nations around the world. Otherwise we would never have upheld our law in that way. They were foreigners, by the way. They were not treated as the Pākehā and as the Crown were being treated in this country. They were here as people looking towards being and accepted towards being eventually an accepted part of the country. The problem was they brought a whole lot of feudal activity, a whole lot of lawlessness, and a culture. I think in some cases we'd find it tough over those times to get used to. Some of the cultural areas of the Pākehā and the Crown were tough for us. If we were honest with ourselves. In some cases far too tough. Especially the spiritual. When you look at that, we've come a long way today, but we had to go through a whole lot for things to start to change. And 1819, 1820, things started to change. And that's a long time. That's about 70 years later since the Pākehā and the Crown came into the country via Captain Cook. That's a long, long time. And only then did we start to look at making some changes. Okay? And immediately you see that the first changes made, spiritual. See? Spiritual. Why? Because we're spiritual people. Spiritual, cultural, super tribal. Okay? But they couldn't handle that super tribal side. They couldn't handle that. Okay? The French, were not a challenge to us. The US were not a challenge to us. Still in the US were a lot of our people, a lot of our tūpuna mātua. The Mayan Indian was still there over that time. So they weren't a threat to us. What did He Whakaputanga say? There are two versions of the declaration, the English text created by Busby and they say Te Reo Māori. Now, we're going to, put quote unquote around that because this is not Te Reo Māori we're talking about here. Anyone looking through those documents, it is Te Reo Matua o Tahumakakanuimatua o Tutura Hapu iwi. That's the reo that's in these documents. Te Reo Matua, not Reo Matua, Te Reo Hapu iwi. O Tahumakakanuimatua o Tutura Hapu iwi. Te Reo Hapu iwi o Te Awa Hapu iwi. Te Reo Hapu iwi o Moai Hapu iwi. Okay, that's whose reo is in those documents, not Te Reo Māori. See, but most Crown operatives and their people on the ground doing the research will always follow the same narrative. Okay? A lot of our people are sucked into that narrative today. They think Te Reo Māori is, you can pin that on everything, but that's not true. You can't pin that on these two documents because that just is not, that is far from the truth, far from the fact of exactly what we're talking about there. as you well know. Okay, and we, e Taunaha, are going to have to back it up there because I've just gone over time, and there are lots of other things that I need to get done, and it's okay. We'll pick it up directly from there, from where we were. What did He Whakaputanga say? And we'll eventually get to that first article again, and we'll start to talk about te reo. Okay, again, let's get clear about te reo. Already you would have noticed some differences from te tiriti. Okay, very close is the reo used in this document. Same reo, just a whole different version. Okay. There's also a little bit of apathy in there. Busby does not worry too much about getting the native ear. Okay. Notice how in te tiriti there's this huge focus on getting control of the native ear and actually manipulating that native ear. And this one, he possibly already thinks they've got that, just to find that actually they didn't really have that. Not really. If they were ever looking to try to revolve things around the wider audience, as well as those who attended the hui for the signing of He Whakaputanga 1835, they failed in that. Okay, and some of them got reached over later years. They got reached over later years. Okay, but we'll come back to it. Look, e tatauma, we'll come back to it. What did He Whakaputanga say? And we'll carry on our look at the. I mean, I didn't even get to today to look at the our version as well. Has got to play a part in this kōrero. So we're all prepared for next week, where we'll be in the north, and the rightful place to be in as well, talking around the tiriti, the old mani, the Magna Carta, and also focusing on that document from the point of view of the situation revolved around He Whakaputanga 1835, and really digging deep into the actual document to find out exactly what was going on there. Politicians shouldn't wipe this document out. This document is hugely important to the establishment of our country. This document, along with the tiriti, established our country, and they should not wipe this document out. I know some National Party politicians have argued that. I wonder if they're still arguing that. If they are, then they're, way off of the reality of things revolved around this particular document. Just as important as te tiriti e tatauma. Believe you me, this document is just as important. We might not look at it as just as important, but it is. They treated it that way, the Crown treated it that way. It was also a part of Busby's plan, his all-out plan, to fulfill the dream of Captain Cook in the country. What was that dream? His lifelong dream. He devoted himself to that as well. And so did Busby. To take this country under Crown and British rule. To take also the element of discovery, to actually overpower that part of everything and take control of everything via that particular perspective, that particular positioning of the British Crown as the actual official discoverer of the country. They failed to do that, but that was part of the reason also for the visit of our tūpuna mātua in that time, 1831-32. Those visits revolved around talks around that. Okay, eventually King William IV, we go from King George VIII to King William IV. He endorses the Hapu and the Ariki. He praises them and actually endorses their mana. Okay, and this is where the Declaration of Independence starts to build. Strange, weird, weird happenings. Some of the situations, some of the events are quite weird. And the reason for that is because though the Crown of Westminster was operating in a certain way, the Crown representatives in the country were operating in the opposite way. Remember, I mentioned those major aims of the Crown in the country, of Busby in the country, and that was one of his major aims, to take this country under British rule. It's a pity that he did that fraudulently, because there's no way that the British would have got this country. Not without a fight, anyway. And they knew that. They knew that. And they didn't want to fight. You know why? Because they knew that they'd lose. Okay? I want you to think about that. I want to leave that with you today. They knew that they'd lose. Because that fight would have been done legally, within the rules and regulations of war at that time, and our tupuna would have taken that out. And they knew that. Okay? But they weren't thinking on that level. They were thinking of a war that was corrupted. How about that? Now, our tupuna didn't operate on that level. Never would they. They were too lawful and too civil to do that. Okay? E tatou mā, and I leave all of that with you today. Aroha mai, we haven't managed to get through a lot. There's been a lot going on. And a lot of reasons why I was so late today. Sometimes I've been a couple of hours late, even 3 or 4 hours late sometimes, but very rarely. Aroha mai though, but very rarely are things like that. But yeah, we've got to give thanks and praise to our Father in heaven, to our Lord, to our God. Father, Lord, Yehoria. Yes, we do take up your command, your the way that you put that, be still and know that I'm God. Yes, we know that, and yes, we in whatever we are having to do in our daily lives, we hold up right there and we think about you and we focus on you, Lord. Why? Because you are the priority to us. You are first in everything, and we take everything to you. We take everything to you in prayer. And we make sure, Father, Lord, that in all those things that we take to you in prayer, that we don't leave anything out. And Father, Lord, this is the thing I bring to you today. Some of the pressures, some of the stresses that have been happening for us, for me, for the top whānau, have been such that they've had to take precedence. But yet again, we have taken them up to you. We have given them up to you in prayer and laid them on you, along with all our cares and woes, what we must always do, Father, Lord. In Jesus' mighty name. Amen. We know, Father, Lord, Yehoria, we know that you will deal with all these things. And from out of all these things and the way that you deal with them, along with us, Lord, not that we will take them back, but you will work with us and in a timing that's perfect. But you will make sure, Lord, that we are considered and that we are appreciated and nurtured and taken good care of over that same time. And so thank you, Lord. Thanks and praises and all glory to your mighty name, your conquering name, and Christ Jesus. Amen. Ka piti hono ka tātai hono, ko rātau nā te mate ki a rātau, i waiho i huai ngā taonga tuku i hone ki a tātai mātau, te kānuhi ora ki a tātai mātau. Kua, kai te mihi atu, kai